Hi everyone. It is just after 8 o'clock on Tuesday night the 14th, and this is our, I think, third Chateau des Charmes virtual tasting. Very pleased to have you here. It's been a really dreary few days out here in Niagara, but we needed the rain, so it's all good. Tonight we are featuring two wines. One of them is a brand new wine for us. It is our 2010 Aligoté from our St. David's Bench vineyard. And the second wine is Pinot Noir, Gamay Noir 2009. And this one is with our estate bottled, or the little green flash here on the side, which means that the fruit can come from any of our 4 vineyard sites. So let's start with the Aligoté. Now, to the best of our knowledge, we are the only grower and producer of a single varietal, single vineyard Aligoté in North America, and we make it every year. Now, my father-in-law is a graduate of the University of Burgundy in Dijon, so he certainly knew all about Aligoté from his studies. And unfortunately, Aligoté had gotten a bit of a bad rap back in the day, and it was actually considered one of the lesser varieties in Burgundy. Of course, white Burgundy means basically Chardonnay. But we love Aligoté, and I mean love it. It is relatively easy as far as vinifera goes to grow. But I think more importantly, we love the wine, the finished wine. And I'll tell you a little bit about where it's grown. Tell you a little bit about the nose, the palate. We're going to go through a tutored educational tasting, and would love to hear your thoughts. So, our Aligoté, we have a couple of acres planted just to the west of the chateau on our St. David's Bench vineyard. Now, we used to have it in a couple of other vineyard locations, but we consolidated a few years ago, and now it is grown only in this one block. Now, St. David's Bench vineyard is actually a really interesting place. At least I think it's interesting, because it is one of the very furthest vineyards from the Lake Ontario in the Niagara Peninsula. The back of that vineyard butts right up against the Niagara Escarpment, and it forms part of the St. David's Bench. So in Niagara there's more than one bench, although we know that the Beamsville Bench is often called the bench. There are several benches in Niagara, of which the St. David's Bench is one. Who cares? Why is that interesting? Well, it becomes a very important part of the terroir story in the St. David's Bench vineyard. Why is that? Well, the Niagara Escarpment is about 1 million years old. It's a limestone formation with a dolomite crust. And off of that limestone formation, you often have, all over the place, you have artesian water that actually drains off the escarpment and goes deep underground. When you walk to the back of our vineyard, which I did with the Aiello group on Sunday, you actually get a sense of the magnitude of the slope. When you are standing at the back of the chateau looking up at the escarpment, it actually feels relatively flat. But when you actually walk the vineyard, walk past the wind machines and walk right to the very back near the tree line and look back at the chateau, you actually see the level of elevation. It has a slope of about 3 degrees from the back of the vineyard down to York Road. And that's just enough to get that artesian water flowing off the escarpment underground and under the vineyard. And of course, the vine roots go down, 20, 30 feet and pick up that water. Now, in that water is dissolved minerals coming off the escarpment, in particular calcium from the limestone formation. That is the key. That limestone, dissolved limestone, is what gives wines from that vineyard their signature flavor profile. And, I call it feminine. You can call it minerally, you can call it fresh, You can call it a little bit floral. It really doesn't matter what words you put around it. But all of the wines that come from that vineyard have this very interesting, unique, signature sort of underlying flavor profile. So Aligoté is a really great example of how a wine can express its own terroir very beautifully, because particularly this wine is unoaked. It is strictly stainless steel fermented, stainless steel aged, and we bottle it very young. And we hope that you enjoy it young as well. So, on the nose, really lovely, really pretty sort of crisp citrus notes, kind of like that Granny Smith apple. A little bit tart, but the wine's gone through some partial malolactic fermentation, so it takes some of that that acidic, harsher malic acid and has been transformed into a softer, warmer malic acid, the acids that are contained in milk. So that's often how wines that have undergone malolactic fermentation actually smell. They smell a little milky in some ways, or a little creamy, but in fact, there's no milk or cream in here. So, on the palate, the acidity really comes through, and that's, I think, a real hallmark for wines from Niagara as a cool climate viticultural area. We are blessed with beautiful hot days during the summer. In fact, I think 2010 had one of the highest recorded number of days in the summer that were over 30 degrees Celsius. So it was a hot, dry summer. Yet at harvest time in the fall, we have this wonderful diurnal temperature change, so that during the day you get all these wonderful heat units, lots of sunshine, but in the evening the temperature drops at least 10 degrees Celsius. That is a critical point in maintaining this lovely acidity that we have in this wine and many others that come from this neck of the woods. It's that temperature change that allows the wines to not bake in the sunshine. They contain all their acidity, they retain all their wonderful flavor profiles without getting that sort of stewed fruit kind of flavor that you'll often find in some hot climate wines. And it's not that one is better than the other, it's just that they're different, and it depends on what you like. Obviously, we're kind of partial to this, higher acid balanced wine. We think it makes wonderfully food-friendly wines, and they're also built to age. So when you have a wine that is in balance right from the very beginning, it tends to remain in balance as it evolves in the bottle. Now, Aligoté is a fresh, fruit-oriented, lovely, crisp wine. So it's not really an aging kind of wine that you would put in your cellar. Not to say that it can't, but we would like you to enjoy it in its freshest floral, fruity kind of, when it's in that stage of its evolution. So, Aligoté. This is one of those summer sipping wines that will quench your thirst on a hot day. Wonderful, with lunches, with, a nice big salad with, even if you had some chèvre and some fresh strawberries, maybe a little chicken in that salad with like a balsamic or even a champagne vinaigrette, this wine would be beautiful with it. You could also think of it with, some fresh seafood, even, a classic shrimp cocktail with, cocktail sauce, that would work. Anything that has a bit of texture to it, because the wine is actually medium-bodied in the mouth. It actually has some nice mouthfeel. So even though it's an unoaked white, it really does have some body to stand up to food. So makes it yummy in my books. All right, so that is our first summer barbecue wine. The wine that you sip while you're barbecuing. All right, our second wine tonight is Gamay Noir. Now, this wine is a a signature variety of Niagara. Now you might think, well, what does that mean? Well, there are, different varieties that have become synonymous with certain wine regions, like Sauvignon Blanc and New Zealand, for example, or Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon in Napa, Shiraz in Australia. Well, in Niagara, or Ontario generally, we believe that Chardonnay and Riesling on the white side, and Gamay, Cabernet Franc, and possibly also Pinot Noir are all on the red side, signature varieties. Now, what that means is we grow them in many different locations within our region. They seem to take on a very specific characteristic when they come from this area, and we really like them. So that helps too. So, Gamay Noir. Gamay Noir, for those of you who enjoy Beaujolais, both in the Nouveau style, but also in the cru Beaujolais, so Beaujolais that are from a very specific small region or village. Gamay Noir is the grape Beaujolais. So, what does that mean? Well, it is a soft, fruit-driven, food-friendly, easygoing wine. Now, I've elected to use a red wine glass for this red wine, but easily it could go in a white wine glass because it has some very pretty aromatics. So these are two Schatz Fiesel glasses, which is we're exclusive Schatz Fiesel retailers, and that's all we use in the winery. Whether you're here for a wedding or at the tasting bar, it's only Schatz Fiesel Triton Crystal that we use. So for the Aligoté, I chose a glass that performs well with aromatic whites. So it has narrow here, a little bit wider here, and keeps all those aromatics right inside the glass. Now, generally for a red wine, you're looking for a much wider bowl with a little bit narrower here so that you get some air in the glass and allows the tannins to soften. Now, luckily for Gamay Noir, it doesn't really have significant tannins that need softening through decanting or a large glass. So for that reason, you could very easily get away with a white wine glass for a Gamay Noir, particularly if you've chilled it down on a hot summer day, which you actually can, and I have. On several occasions, many occasions I should say. So this Gamay Noir is really quite different from a typical Beaujolais or an entry-level, Beaujolais Nouveau or an entry-level Beaujolais. It actually is much more in the classic cru style of Beaujolais. So it actually has some pretty nice warm color, which unfortunately you're not going to be able to get well on the internet. But if you have a bottle of this at home, really do hold it up to white and with an external light source, because you'd be really surprised at how much ruby, bright ruby color that you have in the glass for an unoaked, so-called simple wine. Let's take a little nose. What strikes me about our Gamay, and I think it might be a little bit different than some of the other Gamays that are from the region, is the amount of spice and the amount of complexity for a so-called, easy drinking, simple wine. There is this, you really do get that Gamay kind of, or Beaujolais kind of, a little bit of cherry sort of on the mid palate, kind of like you're sucking on a pastille that is cherry flavored, that kind of cherry. But there's this warm spice like cardamom or white pepper that kind of layers over that makes it a little bit more interesting than just, your little sister's Beaujolais. And for that reason, I really do enjoy this with absolutely anything off the barbecue, believe it or not. From pizza to a lamb burger or a turkey burger with a little bit of curry in it. I've even just on a hot night when you don't want a big heavy Bordeaux variety like Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot, I've chilled this down a little bit and had it with a big steak off the barbecue. And it works nicely because for a so-called little wine, it actually is more on the mid-palate, mid-weight on the palate. So I really like this. You know, it's not what I would call super long, but it nicely fills your mouth while it's there. You do get some nice flavors there, as it goes down. It's not hot, even though you know the alcohol level is a declared 13%. So it's certainly not light. So that's why I say that it would stand up nicely to a steak. If you like beef satay, this is a really nice choice as well, because there's that hint of spice in the wine that really works nicely with the hint of spice in the satay sauce. I've even paired this with chocolate after dinner when, again, I didn't want something as heavy as a dessert wine. So what I love about this is its versatility. And you know, for under $14, the price you can't beat for the kind of quality that's in the bottle. So that's the two wines for this evening. One of the things I would like to point out, on the back of some of our wines that are in the LCBO, you'll see this QR code. For those of you who don't know what a QR code is, it is a three-dimensional barcode. So if you see here, this is what we all see and know as a barcode. And it encodes in a two-dimensional or left to right plane, whereas here you get it in 3 dimensions. So left to right and up and down. That's what makes QR codes so interesting, is that they hold significantly more information. All of our QR codes encode for a landing page specific to that wine. And we thought long and hard about how we were going to use QR codes, because we knew that it was interesting technology and really wanted to expand that back label, because once it's printed, you're stuck with it for as long as that vintage is on the shelf. So it could be a year, could be 6 months, but it could also be 18 months to 2 years. So what the QR code does is it allows us to go in and change the information that's on that landing page, you know, as we need to. If there's a new review or a new recipe or a new promotion somewhere with the wine, we can update the QR code on the fly. And that was what made it very interesting for us. And so the information that's on the QR code works together in harmony with the tasting notes on our website and the back label information. The code does not necessarily just simply duplicate that information, it synergizes with it. So you take those 3 pieces together and you have a complete story. And I'm very proud to say that we at Chateau des Charmes in Niagara, Little Niagara on the Lake, were the very first winery in North America to use QR codes on our back labels. So that was, gosh, almost 3 years ago now. And funny, when we first launched the codes, very few people actually decoded them, which we can tell from our Google Analytics on the landing pages. But more and more, the QR codes kept popping up. So now you see them in ads everywhere. You see them on billboards, in bus shelters, just on windows of stores. I mean, their QR codes seem to be everywhere now. And as a result, our QR codes are being hit or decoded on a fairly regular basis. So it's very cool to actually see how often the codes are actually decoded. So we thank you for that. And that's it for tonight. 2 wines, and we're going to do this again the second Tuesday in September. For those of you who are members of our wine club in British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario, we could actually ship you the wines. The rule of thumb is the wines go out the week before the virtual tasting. And we always choose two wines, one of which is generally in the LCBO and the other one is not. And we try and do that so that you have some interesting and unique wines. This month, both wines happen to be available at the LCBO. The reason being is that the St. David's Bench version of our Aligoté is a brand new wine, and we wanted that one to get out there. And the Gamay Noir is perfect this time of year, so we couldn't resist. So that's the virtual tasting for tonight. Thank you very much for joining, and I'll be monitoring Twitter and Facebook throughout the evening. And if you have questions or would like to add any more comments about your enjoyment of the wines, would love to hear them. So until next month, we'll see you then. Good night.